The World Health Organization estimates that by the year 2050, there will be 2 billion humans over the age of 60, and this will rise to 3 billion by the year 2100. In my opinion, the aging of the human species is the most fascinating and significant story of the 21st century, and tonight I want to share with you the reasons why I think that's the case. I'm going to tell the story of global aging as the story of the 3 S's that correspond to a chapter of our past, our present, and our future. It's a story of success, it's a story of significant challenge, and it's a story that will need science and innovation to have a happy ending for the 2 billion plus people that will be over the age of 60 by 2050, and for all future generations of humans. But first, let's start with the success story. Life expectancy at birth today for a baby in the world is age 72. For 99.9% of the time that our species has been on this planet, life expectancy at birth did not surpass the age of 30. Thomas Hobbes described life in the state of nature as nasty, brutish, and short. And it was certainly short for most humans historically. That doesn't mean if somebody turned 31 in a hunter-gatherer society that they would suddenly just spontaneously drop dead. Life expectancy of 30 means there's very high rates of early and midlife mortality. And if we reflect on our past and we ask why was it the case that so few people made it to what we consider middle age, it's worth reflecting on the reality that life on this world is difficult. The world is hostile, not only to human life, but to life of all kinds. The vast majority of species that have ever lived on this planet are now extinct. The dodo bird is gone, the T-Rex is gone, Neanderthals are gone. 99.9% of the species that have ever existed in the nearly 4 billion years of life on this planet are gone. Most living species, except for plants, eat other living species in order to survive. That makes life pretty nasty and brutish for most of us. There's over 1,400 infectious organisms in the world that cause disease in humans. Smallpox alone killed an estimated 500 million humans in the 20th century before it was eradicated in 1980. So it's an amazing success story that we've been able to go from a world where people mostly died early in life to a world where a baby can expect to become a senior. So how do we do it? Well, it's a story of the power of knowledge and innovation. We had the rise of epidemiology in the 19th century that brought us the sanitation revolution and immunizations. We've had rapid improvements in medical knowledge, changes in behavior. Technologically, we had an agricultural revolution followed by an industrial revolution that allowed our populations to grow and our productivity to rise, and material prosperity followed. There was also a political revolution. Democratization replaced aristocracies. We tapped into the wisdom of many and diverse minds. And finally, countries began to become economic trade partners instead of trying to annihilate one another. So that's the amazing success story. What we've done is we've been able to reduce the extrinsic risks that historically killed human populations before they reached middle age. And we still have continued threats that come from that front, but the population, the life expectancy at the end of this century is projected to go to age 81. Now, with that success story comes a new challenge, a challenge that never was a significant obstacle for human populations historically, and that is that we're coming up against the intrinsic risk factors of our own biology. These are the chronic diseases of late life. And historically, the inborn aging process was not a significant threat to the world's populations. So when we skip to the second chapter of the story of global aging and we say, what are the challenges of today? We live in a world where the infectious diseases have been replaced by the chronic diseases of late life as the most common cause of death for humans on the planet. And it wouldn't make for an inspiring TED Talk for me to kind of unpack the data on chronic disease. It's not a particularly upbeat story. So I'm going to share one personal story about cancer that I think will resonate with everybody, and I hope will illustrate a story that the key insight I want to emphasize in this talk. Last year in 2018, cancer killed nearly 10 million humans. And one of the people that it killed was my best friend. My best friend was the most physically fit person I've ever known in my life. At the tender age of 41, he competed in the Olympic Games, representing Canada for competitive race walking. So at the time, in his early 40s, he was the second fastest race walker in the country. And my best friend was also a nurse, and so he was trained in the virtues of preventative medicine. He never smoked, never drank alcohol, was never overweight, and was always physically active. And he and I used to have spirited debates about what was most important for somebody to make 100 years of healthy life disease-free. And because I had followed the field of longevity science for more than 15 years, I knew that genetics was extremely important for exceptional healthy aging. My best friend believed, because he had lived such a healthy lifestyle, that he could have a century of relatively good health. His father had died at age 83, and he thought surely he should get an extra decade or two because of the healthy lifestyle that he had lived. So it was devastating news when my best friend, who was also my father, was diagnosed with lung cancer at the age of 82. It was very difficult for him to realize exactly how could this happen. He was not a smoker and he was an Olympic athlete. Lung cancer is a disease that happens to smokers. And as we heard in an earlier session, there are multiple causes for a condition like lung cancer. So while my father did everything he could to reduce the modifiable risk factors for cancer, the most significant factor is not something that he could have changed, and that is age itself. Age is the most significant risk factor for chronic diseases. And even if there had been a cure for his type of lung cancer, the chance of him making it to 100 years was stacked against him, because eliminating lung cancer wouldn't have reduced his risk of bowel cancer or prostate cancer or any of the other 200 plus types of cancers. Even if there was a miracle cure for all cancers overnight, that is estimated to increase life expectancy at birth for a population like Canada and the United States by just over 3 years. And the reason that number is lower than most people think is that most people who die of cancer are like my father, they're in late life, and if they didn't die of cancer, heart disease, stroke, or Alzheimer's would have got them shortly thereafter. So the story of my father is the predicament of multi-morbidity. We're not just susceptible to one or two diseases in late life, we are susceptible to a whole variety of chronic conditions. And the explanation for this comes from biodemographers that study the biology of aging in different species. Bruce Cairns and J. Oshansky have come up with this idea that there's a biological warranty period, a period of time that a species remains relatively healthy to get the job of reproduction done. And for the average person, there is variation on this, but for the average person, the estimate is roughly about 7 decades of life. Based on mortality data from hunter-gatherer societies, if you escape predation, starvation, infectious disease, and war, you could probably make it work for about 70 years, but after that, you're unlikely to be around for long. So the most significant advance, in my opinion, for the medical sciences in the 21st century will be an intervention that extends this biological warranty period. And there are individuals that have the kind of extended biological warranty period, and that takes us to the third and the most critical chapter in the story of global aging. I don't think the biggest breakthrough is going to come from a cure for any specific disease of aging. As I've just said, it has a limited effect in terms of promoting significant health in late life. The unassuming and relatively unknown field, geroscience, studies the biology of aging and aspires to develop the ultimate preventative intervention, which is an intervention that would slow down the rate of aging and as a result simultaneously delay all of the chronic conditions that people are at high risk of in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. So I'll give you a flavor of what geroscientists study. This menacing-looking creature here, it's actually pretty cute. It's the same size as a mouse. It's the longest living rodent. It has a lifespan 8 times that of a mouse. And it appears to have an immunity to cancer. It's a real example of exceptional healthy aging. In the second and third decade of life, it doesn't even appear to suffer any signs of the biology of aging, and it remains fertile. So researchers have sequenced its genome in hope that understanding how the naked mole rat can live such a long, healthy life might provide insights for targeting interventions on the aging process in humans. This species here is the bowhead whale. It's the longest living mammal on the planet. It has a lifespan of over 200 years. In nature, size really does matter. If you're that big, there's not too many predators that are going to be threatening your life. And so the trade-off between reproduction and longevity looks different when your Darwinian history doesn't have too many predators. So its genome has also been sequenced. But perhaps the most fascinating area of research are the longest-lived humans. Centenarians, people that make it beyond 100 years, many of them either delaying and some actually escaping the chronic conditions that typically afflict people like my father in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. So these centenarians are not former Olympic athletes like my father. They're not people that eat organic food or do daily meditation. They're not the most affluent people in the world, so they're not like the Donald Trumps of the world. They are people who share a unique genetic inheritance, and it's rare inheritance. And it makes their minds and their bodies more resistant to chronic conditions in late life. So researchers have sequenced their genome. They've identified the particular genetic mutations that are associated with exceptional longevity. And they're working on pharmaceuticals that would activate these genes so that the average person could enjoy the same kinds of health prospects that these rare individuals enjoy. And what makes centenarians so significant is not simply they live a long time, they also experience a compression of morbidity at the end of life. Right? So this was a really counterintuitive finding. You would think that the longest-lived humans were just kind of like hanging on for 3 decades, managing multi-morbidity and various types of disability and frailty. The longest-lived humans actually have a shorter period of frailty and disability at the end of life. So the longer you remain healthy, kind of quicker the descent when your health does take a serious downturn. So the story of global aging, in my view, has 2 possible outcomes, 2 scenarios that will be written for the 21st century. The first scenario is if we don't try to change the aging process itself, we just maintain the biological warranty period of 70 years of reasonably good health, and we focus on disease research, trying to cure every cancer, heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, we will be extending the post-warranty period of life for your generation. This is the period of life that my father was in when he died, where he's managing multi-morbidity, right? You give people a bunch of medications, the goal of which is just to prevent death. That is how success is measured for most of these medical interventions. The downsides of that strategy, it's extremely costly. The quality of life is not necessarily that great. And it will also exacerbate the caring duties that typically fall on daughters to care for their aging parents, given the legacy of patriarchal responsibilities. So there's a variety of difficult social predicaments that we will face if we just focus on extending the post-warranty period of life. But if we instead prioritize and apply gerontological intervention as a form of preventative medicine for the chronic diseases of late life, we could extend the biological warranty period of the average person and as a consequence of that, shrink the period of time where they are suffering from disease, frailty, and disability. That's an aspiration that wasn't feasible for my father's generation. Right? He was born in 1935 in Ireland. He made it to 83, so his healthy lifestyle did offer him many significant health benefits. But for his grandchildren's generation, I believe the aspiration of 100 years is a feasible aspiration, even though the longevity genes don't run in our family. That there will be a medical advance, a drug that's developed that allows people to activate their longevity genes and make their minds and their bodies more resistant to chronic disease. And that, I think, is an aspiration worth striving for. Thank you very much.